Howdy folks, once again, it is Donnie, and in the previous video, we had our introduction to the process management playlist, and we defined what a process is, and we looked at the PS tree display, and we saw that the systemd, or the init process, is the first process on the system. And we also mentioned that all Linux processes have certain properties associated with them. They have an owner, a process ID number. You can see statistics about memory consumption, CPU consumption, and a whole lot more. There's a lot of information that goes along with each of these processes. So in this video, we're going to look at the PS utility, and we're going to see how it can give us a static display of these processes and their properties. Now, here's a little catch about it though. The PS utility is not like most other utilities on the Linux system. A lot of utilities, you can use them without any kind of an option switch. Like for example, the ls utility. You can just do an ls command. It will show you the files in your directory. And you can use option switches then to, show even more information. But the PS utility is absolutely useless if you use it without option switches. We'll demonstrate why here in just a moment. But the little trick here with this is that with PS, or with the version of PS that comes with Linux, at least, there are 3 different types of option switches that you can use. 3 different styles, I should say, of option switches. And this is from the man page for PS. You can see there it can use Unix options, which may be grouped together and may be preceded by a dash. And what it does not say here is that these Unix options, each one consists of a single letter. But you can group them together and they must be preceded by a dash. And then the number 2 option is the BSD options, which are also a single letter. They may be grouped together as well, but they are not used with a dash. So yeah, right away this is kind of confusing here, right? And really what happened there is that, when Unix branched off, and PS, by the way, is kind of derived from the old Unix PS, but when Unix branched off into the commercial Unix, as was licensed by AT&T and the BSD branch, the PS utility kind of diverged, and each one used its own style of option switches. Now, the GNU Linux style of PS, or GNU Linux iteration of PS, it combines those 2 option switches. So regardless of which background you're coming from, you still use it. But then there's also a 3rd option in the GNU Linux version of PS. That is the GNU long option. And the GNU long options are just that. They're long because instead of being a single letter, each option is a whole word. And you will precede those whole word options by 2 dashes. Now, I have never used the GNU long options. I can't even tell you off the top of my head what any of them are, but they're there. They're in the man page, and if you want to look at them, yeah, you're certainly welcome to. So anyway, with this short introduction out of the way, let's go ahead and look at some examples of how to use PS. Okay, so here I am logged into my Debian virtual machine, and we can do a PS like this, and you can see why I say that it's totally useless without option switches, because the default behavior of PS without any options is just to show you what you are doing in your current bash shell terminal. So you see here, the only thing I got going is just the bash shell itself, and I did the PS command. That's it. That's all I got. Okay, and you see here that I have a process ID number right there. So we have process ID number of 1024 for the bash shell process, and process ID of 1434 for PS. And we also can see the terminal. This is the terminal designation, and I am logged in remotely, so this shows up as a PTS /1 terminal. And this is the amount of time that the process was running, not long. And then we have the name of the command which we ran, okay? And I actually did not run the bash shell command. That's just running on its own. So anyway, we got that. Now, if we want to see more things that we can do with PS, we want to look at the man page for PS. And let me tell you something, this man page is awesome. Now, if you're just starting out in Linux, you may have found that some man pages are really, really good and some are not so good. So in this case, though, for the PS, this is just awesome. This is probably the best man page you will ever find in the whole Linux universe. And it not only gives you a really, really good explanation of what's going on, it also gives you examples of how to combine the different option switches to make PS do what you want it to do, to make it display what you want it to display. Because, I mean, you can go through and read about all the option switches, but in reality, it's very, very rare that you're going to use just one single option switch by itself. I mean, sometimes you will, but a lot of times you're going to have to combine option switches to make it do what you want it to do. So here, one of the things that makes this so awesome is just the fact that we have all these examples of how to use these different option switches and how to combine them to show different things. So here we can see all the processes on the system. And here we're using the dash type of option switches, which, what did it say was? That was the Unix one, right? I think Unix one with, let's see. I'm getting confused. Okay, the Unix option must be preceded by a dash. Okay, so anyway, so yeah, that's the Unix option there, Unix style options. And then down here, we have the same thing, except we're using the BSD syntax. So these options and these options can pretty much show you the same stuff. And then we can print a system tree, and in this case here we have this one using the Unix style, this one using the BSD style, and so on it goes. And I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but you can come in here, you can read about all of these different option switches and all these different examples. You can see all these different examples of how to combine the option switches. Now, the option switches don't get explained till further on down. So we have some of them there. And like, for example, the A option switch, it lists the BSD style only your self-restriction. Okay, so in other words, basically, this allows you to see what's going on in other terminals besides your own, besides the one that you're in. And so it will even let you see what other people are doing, what other users are doing if they're logged in. And the -A, the Unix style, kind of the same thing, but it's different. We'll see a little bit how that's different. And lots of other stuff there too. And I'm not going to read through each and every one. You can come in here, just look at this man page, read all this stuff, just play around with all these option switches until you see what it is that your favorite combination is. So anyway, let's go on down here. We can also have the X, which is another useful one, and this lists the BSD style must have a TTY restriction. In other words, if you use an X, this will show you processes that were not started from a terminal. So this will show you your background services. And also, let's see, there's well, the U is not there, it's further down. And so anyway, lots of other stuff there too. And again, I'll let you read all of these on your own. But down here, I want to do the -U, the U and the -U. Okay, so you can do a -u, and you can specify a username that you want to look at. So if you want to look at one certain person's process or one certain user's processes, you can do that with that. And you can also do a U without the dash. And I see nothing but uppercase U's up here, so I'm assuming that the lowercase u is further on down here too. Yeah, we go. Here's the lowercase u. And this displays user-oriented format. In other words, it displays the usernames along with the process names. So anyway, let's go ahead here and take a look at some of these examples. Well, first off, let's go back up here and we'll take a look at some of these examples. Okay, let's do a PS-E and see what we got. So PS-E like so. All right, so anyway, that's what we got there. And we got the process ID numbers, the terminal with which they're associated, the time that they ran, the amount of time that they ran, and the command name. So we see here process ID number 1 is the systemd process. That's the daddy process. And when we see a question mark under the TTY column, that means that that process was not started from within a terminal. It has no terminal associated with it. And so you see we have a whole lot of different processes there. And really, if you're on a machine without a graphical type of terminal, with this terminal here, I have a scroll bar that's outside of the recording area, so I can scroll up and down. But if you're on a machine which does not have that, like for example, if you're sitting at the server itself at the local terminal, you won't have the scroll bar, so you can just do like this and just pipe it into less, like so. Okay, that way you can use your page down and page up key in order to scroll through everything. But anyway, we can continue on down here, and we see here that we have the AGETI. That is your terminal on the local machine. That is the text mode terminal on the local machine. And since the machine itself is running in graphical mode, we have the TTY7, which is associated with the XORG process, which is what gives you your graphical capabilities. And then we go on down again, and we see here the stuff that I'm running. PTS0 is the bash shell, and we also have PTS1, which is the bash shell that I'm in right now. So this bash shell here is the bash shell that's over on the local machine, and this is what I'm running right here. All right, so anyway, then we have also other processes. There's the Apache process. We have a web server on there, and lots of other processes as well. So anyway, let's go ahead here and try some other combinations. Now, this here is my favorite combination, AUX. Now, actually, before we do that, let's do this. Just do PSA like so, and we see now that I am getting the processes from other terminals besides just this local one. And then we can do a PSU, and we see there that we now have just the processes that are running in the local terminal again, but we also have my username. So it specifies which user is associated with the process right over here. And then we can do PSX. And this shows us the processes that were not started from the terminal, along with my own processes here that were started from the terminal. And also, another thing too that you want to be aware of is that each one of these option switches shows a different set of columns, a different set of display columns. Like for example, here is X, we see something that we haven't seen before. We see a status column. And we can look at the different statuses, and we will look at that in just a moment when we go back to the man page. But before we do that, let me show you here this little trick. This is my favorite combination of option switches of all for PS. And this is a combination of option switches which I use all the time. So I use the A, the U, the X all together, all at the same time, and we have that. And so we see here, we have, again, even more columns. So we have the user column, and we see most of the stuff there belongs to the root user. But we have other users as well. We have the systemd user, the message bus user, LightDM for the dbus stuff. And finally, we have this Donnie character down here. Donnie owns a whole bunch of stuff too. So, and then we have the www-data, which is the user that owns the Apache web server processes. And then we can go back up here and we can look at the other columns, process ID number again. And in this case, process ID. But this is kind of curious because before we were seeing the systemd process, the process ID number 1, we were seeing the process ID number 1 show up as the systemd process. But now it's showing up as the sbin init process. Don't know why. That's just the way it does. But that's okay. Either way, it's the same thing. And then we have the percentage of CPU usage, the percentage of memory usage for each processor. VSZ is the amount of memory that's used by each process. And by that, I mean the physical RAM along with the virtual memory. RSS stands for resident set size, which is just the amount of RAM that's taken up, the amount of physical RAM that's taken up by each process. That does not include the virtual memory. And then we have the terminal, of course, the TTY, and then we have the status. And again, we'll look at the statuses here, what all that means in just a moment. The start time, 17:35, which means 5:35 in the afternoon, and the amount of time that it's run, and the command name. And then we can go on down until we see all this other stuff. And I'm not going to read it all out to you, but you can look at it there. You can see there that there is a lot there. Okay? Alrighty. So anyway, let's now go ahead here and look at some more stuff. Man PS. And we can look at the status column. Let's see what all the status stuff is all about. And we'll just go on down here. And there we go. Process state flags is what you want to look for. So we have all these different process state codes. And so we see we have a D, which is an uninterruptible sleep. And it's uninterruptible usually because of input-output operation is going on, and it can't be interrupted. And we also have a running or runnable. So in other words, either the process is running or it is ready to run. And we have an interruptible sleep, which is waiting for some event to complete. We have a T, which is stopped by a job control signal. Lowercase t, stopped by debugger during the tracing. I've never seen that one. W is now obsolete. Don't worry about it. The X, dead process. You should never see that. And then the Z is a zombie process. Whoa, zombie, Night of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, whatever, right? But anyway, so anyway, it's a defunct process. So it's terminated, but it's not been reaped by its parent. And you won't see those too often, but you might see them once in a while, right? And then also you have some amplifying status information, like You can see which processes are high priority, which ones are low priority, which ones have pages locked into memory, which are session leader, and which is multi-threaded, and which one is in the foreground process group. So anyway, let's go ahead here and get back out of here. And again, we'll just go ahead and do our PSAUX. And so here in our status column, we see that most of the stuff here is in an interruptible sleep state. And we see there the stuff that's high priority and the stuff that's low priority. And also we see stuff that's a session leader. So your systemd there is a session leader. And we also have that little lowercase l there, which means it's locked into page memory. And so on and so forth. So you can look through there and take a look at all that stuff. Then on down here, we have the SSH. This is the Secure Shell service, and it is running, because I am logged into this virtual machine remotely from a remote terminal. And also down here, we have the PSAUX, which also running. How about that, right? So, cool stuff there, right? And also we have the uppercase C, which we can use, and we can do PS-C. And when you do that, you're going to name a process, right? Okay, so that shows you information about a specific process by name. So that's pretty cool. And we'll take a look at that a little bit later on in one of my demos. And just lots and lots of stuff that you can do. A whole lot of stuff that you can do. But anyway, the man page, I would encourage you to read it and look at it and just play with all these different options. But basically, the PSAUX, as I said, is my favorite set of option switches, and the uppercase C is also useful to me sometimes. But most of these options, I don't use. There are lots and lots of options, and most of them I don't use. Just very few of them I do use. So, don't get scared by the number of options that are here, because you might not use all of them either. But, oh yeah, and also this is the other thing here I wanted to show you. I almost forgot about it. But anyway, this gives you the description of all of your different columns that you can see with all the different option switches. So it doesn't tell you what columns show up with which option switches. You just got to know that. Well, you don't really have to know it, but just play around with the different option switches to see. But anyway, basically this just gives you a description of these different columns. It explains what shows up in the different columns. So like, for example, the CPU column just gives you the CPU utilization of the different processes. Same thing for memory, and so on and so forth. And you can come on down here and you can see, of course, all of this stuff. Okay, so basically if you pull up a PS display, if you run a PS command and you see stuff that you don't know what it is, you just come in here and take a look at the description here in the man page. Okay, so anyway, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. It's really just impossible for me to explain every little detail about PS in just this one video. But still, it's very, very useful. I will say that. It's extremely useful, and you're going to use it all the time. Okay? So anyway, that's pretty much it for this video. If you like it, be sure to like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time in the next process management tutorial.